Hey everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy, I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. I was just at a WGA mixer tonight. If you are not familiar, a couple weeks ago, everyone had to fire their agents because, well, you can look it up. I don't want to have to get into it, but I just wanted to let you know where I was emotionally. I was at a mixer. I was at a thing that I thought only investment bankers and, Costco middle managers. No shade to either. Well, all the shade to investment bankers. Boy, that sounds terribly white coming out of my mouth. All the shade to investment bankers. If you're a Costco middle manager, you know what? You're okay in my book. And my book is the book of the book is called The Assholes of Capitalism. Hey, this is a great intro if you've never listened to the show before. Hi, how are you, everyone listening out there? New listeners, old listeners alike. I am very excited about this episode. By the way, I should finish what I was saying before, which is I had to go to a mixer and talk to people I didn't know, so I'm in a state of anxiety. And that's where I'm at. Where are you at? Tweet in for your chance to win. Anyway, there's no chance to win, by the way, just in case anyone out there is like, I'll get one over on Andy. Because that happened a long time ago with a Pepsi commercial. In the Pepsi commercial, you get like Pepsi points on, bottle caps or whatever. And the commercial had some like crazy amount. Like if you get 40,000 points, you'll get a Harrier jet, something like that. And they didn't actually do the math and figure out that 40,000 points was actually very easy to get. And I think there was a court case. Look it up. Anyway, like I was saying prior to a tangent, today's episode, Chris Cohen. If you don't know who Chris is, let me tell you a little bit about him with this bio I wrote. Originally from Los Angeles, musician Chris Cohen has been playing in bands since the early 2000s. He played with Deerhoof from their albums Apple O to The Runners 4, as well as in bands like The Curtains and Crypticize, as well as on a number of Cass McCombs albums. As a solo artist, Chris has recorded 3 albums, 2012's Overgrown Path, 2016's As If Apart, and his latest self-titled album, which was just released at the end of March on Captured Tracks. I love it. I mean, I wanted to talk to Chris for a lot of reasons. I'm a huge fan of Deerhoof. I really like The Curtains a ton. But I think his new album is just the bee's knees. And today, Chris is starting his European tour. So if you live on the continent, please go see him. I will say this, you won't be disappointed. Anyway, we get into a lot of cool things in this episode. I won't spoil anything. I didn't really know much about Chris going in. And then I would say 15 minutes in, maybe 10 minutes in, he kind of, he's dealing with some family secrets. And we talk a lot about those family secrets and how that affected him both as a person and as a musician. Very interesting talk. Chris is very soft-spoken, but very thoughtful. So I hope you like this one. By the way, if you are a first-time listener and you like this episode and you want to hear more, you can find all the episodes at beginnings.libsyn.com if you want to download them, or on Spotify. If you listen to those and you're like, I should subscribe to this, you can do that on Apple Podcasts, on Stitcher, on Spotify as well, on Google Play, and I'm sure a bunch of other places. I've talked to tons of people, writers, musicians, actors, comedians, thinkers, everyone from, hey, look, if you like indie rock and that's why you're here, I've talked to Carl Newman from the Dirty Projectors and who else might be of interest to you? Ava Luna, Parquet Courts, Mitski, Tim Kinsella, Rachel Brown from Field Mouse. That was pretty good. Sadie Dupuis of Speedy Ortiz. Colin Newman from Wire. That was a really good talk. So check out episodes, subscribe. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. And I think that's about it. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to go eat some vegan marshmallows, which will calm my nerves. And you will now hear my talk with Chris. Did you like growing up in Los Angeles? Like, was it a fun, or was it like any kind of?
I don't think about it like that because I didn't have any choice. I mean, I didn't have anything to compare it to, but I had an appreciation for what was around me, I guess. I mean, as I got older, I started to realize how particular it was. I mean, every place is particular, but I guess the first place I moved to was the Bay Area, so I could compare it to that, and I noticed how many more options there were here, and I noticed a certain kind of freedom here that the Bay Area doesn't have. But then also, as I learned more about it, learned that freedom usually just meant people getting screwed. So in a way, I kind of feel like, I'd rather kind of live somewhere like the Bay Area in a way. I feel like LA is just like the Wild West frontier of capitalism, and that I think that's the feeling that I grew up with, of just like, you can, people can just do anything. I mean, driving around, you see, people just make insane decisions at any moment, and there's not a lot of rules or accountability. But I will say that I think that has gone into my mindset. That's a big part of, I think, who I am. Is that I'm used to this kind of freedom, for better or worse. So it's a part of me, like, I guess everybody's homes are a part of them. But I don't know, liking it or not liking it, at this point, I don't want to live here that much longer. My partner and I have decided to leave LA before the Olympics, so we have less than 10 years. I don't think I want to be here as the climate is changing, and it just it doesn't seem sustainable.
No, it's. I've never felt. I'm still, I've been here about a year and a half now, maybe a little more.
Oh yeah,
and it's all the kind of like existential feelings, or all the kind of just like things that my brain is attuned to that I don't like, but I can feel out in the atmosphere, like desperation and like that thirstiness. Like, I went to a WGA mixer the other day, and it just felt like everyone was thirsty, and I could just feel it in the air.
What's WGA?
The Writers Guild.
Okay.
And the exploit, like it's both thirstiness on one side and just like a kind of like exploitation on the other side, or like a desire to exploit people. And I just feel that like most places that I go here, and it just doesn't sit well with me. And I'm still trying to find like the good pockets that aren't like either of those.
You really have to search here, but there is such a wide range. I think there are good pockets, but I know I've felt that a lot too. I mean, I stay in my little small world here. I don't really go, I live on the east side, and I tend to not go more than like a couple miles from my house. But even there, it's actually getting really competitive. So I feel that too.
I mean, it's just like economically, like when we were looking for we moved into like a crappy kind of apartment, and then spent the entire time until we found this one looking for apartments. And just like everything was so expensive.
It used to be much better. It all got worse a couple of years ago. I mean, 10 years ago, it was really pretty easy. I remember like I moved back here from the Bay Area, and it it just seemed like everything fell into place for everybody I knew that. Many people that I knew that lived here didn't work regular jobs and were able to kind of like just be kind of marginal artists, and I really like that. And now everybody seems more. They're either more successful or they're just like miserable and they're like about to leave. And
New York was like that too.
Yeah.
I think there was a point. There's a economic tipping point where New York became just a place for, like billionaires from Russia and China to park their money in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the culture started to kind of leave.
Yeah, that's happening here too.
Yeah,
but I mean, I don't want to be hating on LA too much. I still kind of love it. I mean, there's a lot of people here I love and places I love. So I'd like to leave it with positive feelings, but I will leave it, I think.
Well, I want to stop bad mouthing it. I want to, when someone's like, how you doing? And we're like, I hate it here. I want to stop just saying, I just want to like, I also want to mean it. I don't want to just like stop bad mouthing it. I also want to be like, no, I found some things I like about this.
There are things that you can do to make it better here, I'm sure. Like I said, there is like a lot of freedom. So,
when you say freedom, like what did that mean for you? Like when you were growing up?
I don't know. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like in my 20s, people that I knew were starting you could start it like if you were into music and you want to have shows, like you could just start a venue. Like I was friends with some of the people that started The Smell, and I mean, they've definitely had their challenges, I know, but back then I think it was like, you could do stuff like that. There was, if you wanted to like find a weird place to have a show, there was like, there's like a million of these like old restaurants that have like a room in the back, and you could just, like there were things that you could discover. I mean, that were at least were new to you, and things were like, I mean, also there was a lot more. There were fewer people competing for. There were still a lot of jobs back then. Like I would say, it felt like there was a trickle down from Hollywood. TV and especially commercials and movies. I think it felt like there was like a trickle down where there were like, if you wanted to get a job being, doing like wardrobe or PA type of work, like a lot of musicians and artists, people that I knew like had jobs like that. They didn't seem like they was like that hard to get. And proportionally, like the pay was very good. I mean, for what rents were like back then, the pay was really good. So I think, I don't know, I'm kind of out of touch with that type of work now, but it seems like it's a lot harder. There's so many more people here. So, it was just like you could get a job. It seemed like you could get a job easily that was kind of like paid well, and you didn't have to do, you didn't have to be so career minded. Mm-hmm. And that gave you time to do whatever your art thing was you were doing. I felt like, if you had an idea, it seemed like easier to do back then.
Yeah, I went to college at the University of Pittsburgh, and something I always think about Pittsburgh, I also was in a band then, and I credit the city with, if you had an idea and you had some friends that were into it, you would just go do that thing. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't just sit around talking about stuff. Yeah, you would actually go do it.
Yeah, I think in places that aren't like the big like supposed cultural centers like New York and stuff, like I think those places were or hopefully still are kind of like that. That's kind of like more where things actually happen, I think. But I don't know. I mean, what do I know? I'm not a historian, but I'm just speaking from experience. It felt easier to do things back then.
But like, so things weren't as like me coming here to Los Angeles in 2017, 2016, whatever. I can't remember exactly, but like, it felt like I was dropped into a place where everything was like extremely professionalized. Mm-hmm. And
it probably was.
But growing up for you, there was a lot more, there was access to things. There was more freedom.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think that that's across the board for everybody. I mean, I'm a white man and grew up with a lot of privilege. There was a lot of things available to me that were not available to other people. So I want to say that with a lot of I'm saying that very carefully. I don't think that was I don't think that that's the case for everybody.
Right.
Definitely. But yeah, my experience was it was pretty easy to do stuff.
Yeah. Well, your dad was a music executive, right?
Right. Yeah. My dad was the vice president of, or he was the vice president of A&R at A&M Records, from like the mid 70s to early 80s, I think. Before that, he was an A&R person at Columbia, in New York. And he was a disc jockey for a year on WNEW, and he worked as he was the house manager at the Fillmore East in New York City, like the whole time it was open. So he was like sort of Bill Graham's assistant, and Bill Graham got him a job working at the Wiltern. He was the house manager at the Wiltern in the 80s when it reopened. And then he also worked for Herb Alpert, running the Herb Alpert Foundation, and he also functioned as Herb Alpert's manager when he would do like records sometimes in the 90s, and my dad would function as his manager. So he had a lot of different jobs in entertainment, and his background was in theater, like musical theater and stuff. And my mom was an actress, in musical theater and theater, non-musical theater, what do you call that, plays. My mom was a stage actress in the late 60s, mid to late 60s. And they met in the theater world, and then my dad started working in music.
This is in New York?
Actually they met in Pittsburgh. They went to Carnegie Tech, as it was called then. And then I don't know all the chronology, but they lived in New York for like 10 years, I think, maybe longer.
Are they from Pittsburgh originally? Or
no, my parents are both from Ohio. And they met, I think, when they were teenagers, but then like they got together in college when they were at Carnegie Tech, and they were married when they were like 19 or something, which I don't recommend to anybody. That really puts things in perspective for me.
Did they not get along?
Did they not get along before they were married?
Well, at 19, I'm trying to think back to like when I was 19, or if I would have like married the woman I was dating then, and I'm like, oh, that would not have been good.
Yeah, I think that they got along. I think that they're. I could say a lot of things about their relationship. I don't really know. I think they got along probably, for a long time. But their relationship was not like your stereotypical straight marriage. I don't know how much. I don't know if you read like my background about my music.
I read like 2 pieces of information.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, my dad's gay. My dad's like he was kind of in the closet, but not to my mom. Basically, my parents, when they married, my mom knew that he was gay, but it was, this was in the early 60s, or I forget what year they were married, but it could really, it was a really different time. And for them, I don't know, they had kind of like a very particular kind of arrangement. My dad was always seeing other people if they were men. He always was seeing men on the side. And then that kind of just was like, they were married for 53 years, and they were divorced officially, like, I don't know when, like 2 years ago now, or a year, really recently. And their marriage was sort of in the process of just falling apart for the past, like, however many years. But during the making of this last record, they were divorced. And finally, my dad has been, he lives on his own, and they both live on their own. And my dad, I think, I don't know how he identifies really. He doesn't, I think he doesn't like the label. He probably wouldn't like being labeled as like gay or bisexual or whatever. But I think he's sort of like out in some sense now, at least. Like, I don't think he keeps it a secret anymore, but that was sort of like our family secret. And then, well, I forget why I'm bringing this up, but if you're asking about like where my origins are, it comes, I was born into this kind of arrangement.
Mm-hmm. I mean, did they have affection for each other? Like, were they friends, or was this just kind of just like we're gonna keep each other's secrets in this way?
No, it wasn't like I mean, it was. My parents were friends. I mean, my parents were friends, and I don't doubt that they loved each other. I don't know what I don't know what they would say now. But my dad wanted to have kids, and my mom actually didn't want to have kids, but she did it anyway, and she ended up doing a lot of the parenting. And I know that my mom I think she really liked being a parent, actually. And my dad liked the idea of being a parent, but in my eyes didn't really didn't come through on a lot of the things that you might expect a parent to do. But he came through on a lot of them too. I mean, I wasn't like totally neglected or anything like that, but I just got to know my dad a lot in recent years. And yeah, he was not the person I thought he was, which is fine, And I think that's really common too. I think a lot of people don't really know their dads.
No, I don't really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to sound like I don't want to complain too much about it. I think I know that's super common, but it was a weird thing to find out really late in life.
Yeah.
I mean, I found out when I was 30 that my dad was gay. And then I also found out he has like a lot of addiction issues, and that all came out when I was 30. And then he was supposedly clean, and he joined NA, and he became like an NA sponsor. And I think he was probably just still using the whole time. And then he kind of bottomed out again. And yeah, so that's where I come from. I mean, he worked in the music business, and he was kind of just like a hard partying, like 70s guy. He was around during the like payola era, and he comes from a generation of like being pretty homophobic and pretty sexist, and like he what do I want to say? I don't know. He just he was like one of these like he was like the very cliche, like if you see movies about like 70s music business and stuff like that, he was like that. He was just like a real
vinyl
hungry. Yeah, kind of, except I mean, I don't think, whatever, I only use like that character seemed a little bit more actually kind of cooler. I think my dad was a little dorkier than that, but that kind of that culture of like these like super powerful men, that was the world that my dad came from, or that he lived in for a long time. And so I was raised in that, and my music making started, I think it had a lot to do with that. Like I saw a lot of the music business as a kid, and I was really excited by it. I mean, I also just saw I was really consuming all of the pop culture of that time, like late 70s, early 80s. And I wanted, when I saw him, I was a musician from day one. I was always playing playing my toy drums or whatever. I just was always into music. And I would see the pop musicians on TV. I felt like somehow I want to be part of that. And then there was an easy, kind of an easy entrance into it, at least in the way that I could see, my dad. I saw my dad in that world. So yeah. I saw the kind of behind the scenes part of it. It was never offered to me as like I never got like oh, Chris, do you want to be a pop musician or whatever? Or like, do you want a meeting with someone at this record label? It wasn't like that at all. It was very like, actually, like those doors were never like open to me, that I might be part of that world. Well, I think my dad just thought like, oh, Chris he's a real artist. He doesn't.
Yeah.
One time he got me a job at the Wiltern. I don't know if people listening to this podcast know about the Wiltern Theater is near here actually, and it's an old movie theater that's now like a concert venue. So my dad worked there, and he got me a job as an usher. I remember when I was in high school. That was like the only like string he ever pulled for me. I'm not complaining about that. That's fine. but I never thought of it like, oh, I could be on A&M Records. It wasn't like that. It was just kind of like he gave me a drum set, and we never really talked about music, or I tried to talk to him about music a lot. But he gave me the tools to become a musician, and never encouraged me, never tried to discourage me from that, or never tried to suggest like, oh, you might want to think about having a practical career. And my mom as well. They were both like, they never suggested that I do anything else. They were really, really hands off. I would say kind of like, a little bit checked out.
Yeah.
I mean, they were very loving parents, but they were also like, they didn't really know what was going on with me. And I think they just thought I would figure it out. And here I am. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Well, I mean, I have like 30 questions, but like one of the things I was thinking of was, you've got a time period where I don't think parents start really paying attention to like the late 80s. I'm a couple years younger than you,
Start
but
paying attention
to their kids in that way. Like I think in the 90s you get this term helicopter parents, where they're like really, usually they're like, they'll, like my parents were like, he'll figure it out. Or like I could go play with my friends after school without having to like check in until like dinner time, that kind of stuff.
My parents are coming out of the 40s. They were born in the 40s, and their parents were like, my mom was told like children are seen and not heard kind of thing. So, I mean, what they were doing was already like revolutionary compared to their upbringing. But yeah, I mean, they weren't, I mean, I know people my age whose parents were more involved, but it's true. I know what you're saying. I mean, there's parenting obviously has gone through a lot of changes. Yeah.
But not also, they had their own shit they were going through, that it seems.
Parents always are. I mean, I think, I don't know what to say about that. But yeah, it's true. The parenting style was so different back then.
I do think there's like a difference between like I don't think my dad ever had to deal with, my dad had to deal with my grandmother dying, or his mother, or he worked at a computer company, and his boss was an alcoholic who ran the company into the ground. And so my dad had to like figure out like, oh, what am I going to do with my career now? But I don't think he ever had to deal with like deep existential issues like your dad was dealing with.
I don't know. I think everybody deals with those issues. I mean,
but issues around like specifically, like I think about, I have some friends, apparently there was like a huge contingent in the West Village of marriages where the husband was gay or bi, but they were in a marriage, and then the father would have his own life.
I think it's just everywhere in the world where heterosexuality is like the rule or something. I mean, I feel like it's. I mean, I don't know, but it seems like it's a problem that gets dealt with in different ways. I mean, it's made into a problem in most cultures, and that like works itself out. But yeah, I mean, I think it's everywhere. I mean, it's so common. I don't know. It's just. I mean, I hope that nowadays that doesn't happen as much, but maybe it doesn't happen as much. I hope.
Yeah, I think things are changing, but there's still like that. I mean, the kind of repression that your father was dealing with, both like personally and also kind of culturally. I assume like just had to be a. Sorry, I was thinking in my head of like a term for like a slang term for heteronormativity being like a straitjacket, like straight.
Yeah.
But something like that, like this kind of just like existential straitjacket on him.
Yeah.
In a way that like that I'm sure influences behavior and influences parenting style.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know. I've talked about my dad so much. I'm like almost tired of. I mean, I feel like I've just given my dad too much airtime. I mean, I guess I brought it up because it's like, I think that I've started thinking about like why did I start making music? I mean, I think that's really natural. Like most people like to make music. Many people naturally do. And, I was encouraged. And then I think it became this thing that was like a language for me to like, for a person like me, who's like pretty kind of quiet and shy, it became like a language for me to contact, to be part of the world and to get some kind of contact, to make friends, just to like it's become this role that I've grown into. But I think it had something, I do think it had something to do with like, not trusting. I don't really trust words that much. I think, going back to my parents and my family situation, I didn't feel like words were really communicating. And I think I learned to make music just as a means to communicate, where I'm at and who I am and my feelings. And luckily I was encouraged, it was that role was in a way was, not that I was like pushed into it or something, but it was made, that was just like that channel opened up for me. And, so I think that's part of why I'm a musician. And I thought that music was a subject matter that my dad would really, I thought that I could connect with him on that. There was nothing else I felt like that I could like really, I was like, that I could get him to have a real discussion with me about, like he wasn't going to open up to me about who he really was. He wasn't going to share his feelings about things because none of them made sense without understanding that he's an addict and that he's in the closet. So there was nothing to connect to because everything was like a lie. And music, I felt like, was this ground where maybe, like if I could, like if I wrote, when I got a 4-track and I started making music, I remember like this one time he heard me playing something. He was like, "Oh, that was an interesting chord you put in there." And then from then on, it was like, "Oh, interesting chords. Yeah. Okay." And I think it was like a way to get his attention, and it was stupid. I mean, not stupid. It was totally sensible, but it was not, it didn't really address the problem. I mean, I never really got that. I never got what I wanted out of it from him, but it was good because it got me into, I mean, all the other reasons that I make music, that's just one part of it, but all the other reasons why I make music, it got me into this thing that has helped me, be part of the world a little bit more than I think I might have been otherwise. And, so it was healthy in that way, but the thing with my dad was, I've just come to realize while making this album, I think I really started to realize, that was like kind of a hopeless goal. But it's funny to think that might have been why I started to play music. But I think, I mean, it's been years. I think it's gotten into a lot of other, my music making has had a lot of other, reasons behind it. And, it's done a lot more for me than that. But it was interesting to think about as like an origin of my music.
That's interesting. 'Cause one of the things I was thinking of was, your mom's she's a Broadway background. Your father is a music executive at, large labels, and you play indie rock, in different bands. And I mean, I guess
I'm off the radar for his world.
Yeah. That's
even when I was in Deerhoof, which was pretty successful for my frame of reference, like even that was just kind of like, I don't even think he was really proud of me. I know. I mean, he was really into cutting out, like I think one time we were in the New York Times and he cut out the thing and framed it and put it up on the wall, and I begged him to take it down because I felt so like that wasn't important. But sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just trying to think about like there's this kind of I don't know about disconnect between the two worlds. I know my parents don't understand my world at all.
Right. I mean, that just goes without saying, I'm sure, just for every generation. But actually, my mom, I mean, I did feel like my mom really, like, she understands the reasons why I make music. And actually, my mom, like, I mean, she has been somebody that has always liked to engage with me about anything, and including music. So I didn't really need music to do that. But it has done that. So, my mom and I share a lot about music and and art and stuff. So,
I mean, what was she like when you were growing up? What was her personality?
my mom's awesome. I mean, she's really smart. She's really independent. Actually, I mean, it doesn't make sense when I think about her marriage, but my mom's really tough, and she's just like, she likes to talk about things. She reads a lot and she likes to talk about things. She's at school. She teaches high school English, and she also taught at the elementary school that I went to. So I had her as an English teacher. But she's just like, my mom's just like a nurturing person, and she's really cool. She's still out there teaching English in the Valley. She's 78, I think, right now.
Was that weird having your mom in your school? My mom was an English teacher, but she taught at a different school than mine. Yeah. So I never had to worry about having a parent. It seems like such a weird conflation of authority figures.
I mean, my mom's role as a parent she's not a big authoritarian. And as a teacher, I would say she's not a big authoritarian either. She just kind of, I feel she's just like a person that gets respect because I think, as a teacher and as a parent, she didn't really have to be an authoritarian. It wasn't as weird as you might think. I mean, also, I went to the school before she started teaching. And I remember at the time, it was she started teaching, she was teaching theater class, and then they needed an English teacher. And it was at kind of a small, like a small private school in LA. And so it was sort of informal in a way. And as she became my teacher, it wasn't that weird. I mean, it was as good as it could have been, I'm sure, for any parent teaching. It was awkward, I guess, a little bit. But she was, I think she probably did it the best way anybody could have. There was a lot of days where I would be stuck at school, like after school. I remember just being kind of wandering around this empty school, my school, when it was dark out and stuff, and just being still at school. And that was weird. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't, my mom being a teacher wasn't as strange as you might think. There was a time when my dad worked at the school also. Actually, there was a year where he quit his job at A&M, and then he, for some reason, got a job working at my elementary school in the office. So my mom and my dad and me and my older sister all drove to school together. I remember getting in the car in the morning and going home together. That year was a little rough, but he only did that for a year, and then my mom was there for more years. But
I remember there being, when I would go to my mom's school, if there was an in-service day at my school and there was no one to babysit me, I would go with my mom, and there being something sitting in their faculty room, and there was one of those old soda machines, the ones that a cup came out and then it poured soda in, if you remember those. And the idea of I get to, I don't know, there was something special. And again, maybe this was just because my mom taught at a different school, but there was something special about getting a peek into this adult world, or getting this peek into this world of authority figures that that no one else had, or not a lot of other people had.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I saw all my teachers on the weekend. My parents would have this 4th of July party, and all my teachers would come over to my house, and I would see them drinking and stuff. And actually, it was kind of fun. I mean, most of them were cool, but yeah, it was weird.
I mean, did you have between seeing your teachers as human beings early on, and seeing the world of the music business, seeing the business world? I never understood business stuff until probably moving to LA. Really, is where I started to I'm oh, when I was living in New York, I really didn't understand this. I thought I did, and then I got here, I'm oh, okay, now I get this. Or seeing do you think you had I don't know how you would really measure this, but do you feel maybe you knew more you were less naive when you were growing up
about the music business,
about everything, but just seeing how real things work, in a way that I think I was protected. I think I was very naive until somewhere into my late 20s, early 30s.
I don't know about that, but I will say this, that my sense of the music business was I just never wanted to be part of it. I thought seeing the kind of music that my dad, I mean, he was involved with some cool stuff for sure, but I had this sense of oh, it's not a fair playing field. only really bad music gets popular. I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot. My feeling is that pop music took a turn, like at a certain point. I want to say like in the mid to late 80s, where I feel like, I mean, as a kid, I really liked the pop music that was around in the early 80s. I feel like I still feel like there's like this sophistication to it, just on a technical level, as far as the compositions and I mean, I don't know, I guess, in subject matter, pop music tends to be superficial, but like, I still feel like there was this turning point where just like I really detached from popular music, and I've thought a lot about my own like kind of emotional history with it, and I think it has a lot. I mean, I'm not saying this like an authority or historian of pop music. I actually think it has more to do with what was going on in my life. But I think that as things kind of deteriorated, I think maybe like my relationship to music changed as I got older. I think having something to do with my dad, really. I mean, I hate to say, I don't want to give him that much credence, but, like something around that time, I wanted to get into music that was not a part of what I saw as being like my dad's world. Like I really got into like, like Southern California hardcore music, and I was really into the Grateful Dead, which my dad like absolutely hated the Grateful Dead. And I just got into things that I was like, oh, this is like, I wanted to like push some boundaries or something. Yeah. I think, but I do still think though that as my taste developed, I mean, first of all, I think that was where my consciousness of music as being like this identity, like that that music is a place where you establish your identity by the music that you buy and the music that you say you're into. Like, I reached a certain, like, I mean, I'm sad to say it because I actually think it's a great loss. And I think this coincides. This is about the time when I'm saying I think music went bad. I mean, it's probably just me that went bad, but I started to just be like, oh no, I'm not like everybody else. I'm into X, Y, or Z. And so I just kind of started to detach from the music that I saw as being part of the mainstream. I mean, and I'm talking, the things that I chose were probably equally, I think it's really random, what you choose, what you decide is like inside and outside. But for me, what was outside was punk and getting into like obscure, progressive rock and like, 1960s music, and
like
there was
Magma.
like a turning. Yeah. Like I was like, yeah, something like that was like, getting into krautrock, back then was like, oh, this is like nobody, I mean, cause back then, there was, before the internet and stuff, it was like, I was like, oh, this is the thing that nobody in my high school knows about.
No one knows about Faust.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in like about like 10th, 11th grade, I started really getting into collecting records, and you could still find all that stuff. And I had a few older friends that like hit me to stuff, and that was my, like, those were my little, that was my identity, was like, I'm into obscure music.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have a little bit of that. I'm not actually really proud of that. But I do, I like finding things. It's totally fine.
I exactly know what you're talking about.
I mean, part of it is very benign. Like, we all love to like find something that's new. Newness is cool, but I mean, so I guess I just was looking for things that I felt like made me different or could get me some attention. And at that point, it also coincided with music kind of change. I mean, there were certain technological things that I think changed at that time too. The sound of recordings really changed. And my sense of taste really veered away from the production of the late 80s and 90s, like all the digital reverb and all the type of beginnings of digital music. And even, I mean, it's not even just an analog or digital thing, but just like sort of the polish, the sheen of popular music at that time Whereas I like totally loved the sheen of like early 80s music up until about like 1984, 85. But then things just started to sound bad. And I really still feel like those things sound bad to me. I mean, there is music of that era that I love, but I feel like the stuff that I love tends to be more underground. And it was weird to me in the early 2000s when things started to sound a little bit more like the music I liked and be popular. And being in Deerhoof and watching the popularity of that band rise really it really flipped me around in terms of aesthetics. Like I was really surprised that people liked things that I liked. And that's continued with me to now. So there's something in there about that, my personal history and the way that music changed. And just going back to your question, I connected the world of like the behind the scenes music world of my dad. Like it seemed really cool. And I still like romanticize that time of before I wanted to separate myself from everybody else. Like the time when I was really into top 40 music, I was happy. I just loved everything. I mean, there were some things I didn't like. There were a few songs maybe on the radio I didn't like, but basically I liked everything that I heard because I had no filter. And I want to get back to that kind of in a way, but I feel as though it's sort of like Adam and Eve, you sort of like, you taste the apple of knowledge or whatever. And there's no going back kind of. And now I'm sort of stuck with this like collectory, particular mentality about music. I just feel like I'm fascinated with trying to pull it all apart, but from my personal history and larger things that were happening in the world of music, not to mention things that were happening politically and just in general in the world at that time. But it is really interesting to think about.
I don't think this is a hard and fast rule, but I've noticed, doing this show for 9 years, the people I talk to, there's patterns in the way that we develop as people. Mm-hmm. And there's that period where you're just like absorbing everything, and then you're trying to figure out your own identity. So you're like getting very particular about stuff. And because I formed in opposition to my parents' music choices. Yeah. My parents listened to Barbra Streisand and Billy Joel and lots of musicals, specifically like Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals. Uh-huh. And so like when Nirvana comes along, and then that's the like kind of like doorway into early 80s hardcore and into indie rock and all those other kind of stuff.
It really depends on the culture that you're coming from. I think that our culture, like American, 20th century American culture, has been really all about individuality, and capitalism and I think that it's like, I guess I don't take it as a given that like, when you reach a certain age, you're going to have to like, sure, people reach adulthood and they want, there's a process of like individuating yourself from your family or whatever. But I think that there's a big cultural part of it, which is that like we're not really allowed to figure out who we really are. We have to create this profile by means of what we buy, because that's the only avenue where expression is encouraged. Or I don't want to say only, but it's strongly encouraged that that is the proper avenue to express yourself. Yeah. And I don't take it as a given that like it's like that in all cultures. I'm sure that there are people in other cultures that have gone through a different process of creating their identity. But in our culture, it just seems like that's the thing. And I wish I could get out of that, but
yeah, I say a lot on the show that I was so formed by capitalism that when I was in high school and I would go to like the CD store, I would feel guilty if I didn't buy something.
Wow.
If I just went in,
I didn't.
And I thought like just by patronizing a store, just by like, not even patronizing, by literally walking through the threshold, I somehow owed something to them because they're a store. And I spent a lot of, since I've become, in my 20s, conscious of that stuff, really rebelling against it. I wonder, so let me amend this a little bit. I wonder if there's this like, you are reacting to your parents' or culture's choices in some way, and then buying a persona, and then at some point in your life, you realize who you are as a person, and you can get rid of the parts of that persona that you just bought, and you can have the parts of that persona that are more authentic.
I don't know. I still really love all that stuff that all the choices that I made, all of my like aesthetic development. I still love and my taste hasn't actually really changed. Like I still love all that stuff.
But I don't have to like, I don't really
buy things that much anymore.
Yes. Well, I mean, I've gotten, now that I can buy albums and support people, now I can again. But like there was a point where I was just like, fuck Billy Joel. And now like, I'm not like putting Billy Joel albums on, but I kind of like some Billy Joel songs. Like I'm no longer like, I no longer have to be so vehement about the things that vehemently against the things my parents liked, in a way that I was like desperately trying to be an individual.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're obviously your own person. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, was there some measure of you, and I'm just projecting my own personality, so it may or may not be, but like I was really like, I had this kind of need to be a singular individual person that no one else was like, idiosyncratic to the max.
Everybody is. But then you also just basically turn out kind of the same as your parents too. That's the irony. And I mean, that seems okay too to me in a way. But that's the that's the contradiction, is just that we are all completely different. But then, you're not going to really be that different.
Yeah. But you didn't have that driving you. Like that wasn't
to be different.
Yeah. Like when you were a teenager.
I mean, kind of. I mean, I thought of myself as being different. I mean, yeah, I that's part of I think that's part of the process of growing up, is like, you have more of an awareness of other people. Like everybody kind of thinks they're different, so we're all different and not different. And as an adult, or just, I think maybe a healthy person comes to accept both those things as being true. It's hard when you can't accept that. When it has to be one or the other.
There was a point I got to that where I'm like, instead of like being desperate to carve out this, like, because what happened was that I ended up carving out such an obscure niche that I'm like, oh, I have very few connections to people now. And now I'm trying to like get back to this point where I can find more of a community in people at large. We're like, we watch the same shows instead, as opposed to before where I'm just like talking about some like French art film or something that, maybe a couple other thousand people have seen. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. My taste runs high and low. I mean, I like all kinds of things, but yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a conscious obsession to be like, I have to be an individual. Like, thinking back on it, I just see that was a motor somewhere in my psyche.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think that to a certain degree we get programmed to do that.
But at some point, like,
it all ends up that you're just giving your money to. We're programmed to do that, and it's that system has worked pretty well for the people who created it.
Oh, so what you're saying that there's even a deeper, like, it's a function of capitalism to rebel in that way, to have to buy.
Yeah, because if you were really rebelling, that would threaten the people at the top. I mean, this is a safe way to rebel,
right?
Oh, buy the Pavement record, not the Kenny Loggins record. I don't know. I mean, what does it really matter? There's always, you kind of, I mean, I don't know. You get what I'm saying.
Right. Buy Crooked Rain. Don't build a guillotine to.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't comparing it to. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, people also just, music is something to enjoy and listen to too. I don't mean to just reduce it to this like, oh, it's all about your identity, but it has that role.
Yeah. Well, it's wrapped up. You can't pull the things apart in under capitalism. I mean, when did you become politically conscious like that?
I don't know. I mean,
was it just 80s hardcore? That kind of like
no. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't think about any of that stuff. I mean, but I think I did have this sense of like something feels empty or not fulfilling. So I think everybody is kind of political from day one. We all know that there are needs. We have needs that are not being met. So that's immediate. But I mean, I worked in record stores. That was pretty educational. Being a musician and putting out records on different labels and stuff, and dealing with the business side of music in my world, I've learned a lot about. I guess that's shaped my political feelings. Definitely.
I mean, what was there a specific point in your life where you started to, where suddenly it broke through? Like, you had worked at record stores for a while, and then suddenly you're just like, oh,
when
wait.
I worked in record stores, I went to school in Santa Cruz, California, and I worked at this record store called Streetlight, which is still there. And I worked there for a couple of years, and then I worked at Amoeba in Berkeley. And when I started, I thought like, oh yeah, I want to get first dibs at all those good records, and I'm just gonna, amass my collection and meet other people. I really wanted to meet people through that job, and I just, as I looked, it happened pretty quickly. I feel like it didn't take more than like a month or two of working. I mean, it got worse as it went along, but I found myself like my desire to like buy things, like my desire to get the actual records just sort of really dwindled, because I was like, you just start to develop an association with it. Like, oh, that's how I make money. Going to work, I show up to work every day and work in the record store. I put the CDs in the bin, and you feel, I don't know. I guess I would like, you buy the records and then you just sort of like, well, I think really what it was I wasn't listening to music in the same way, because I was like getting so much music, more music than I could process.
Yeah.
And of course that's like a lot like, what we have now with the internet. But it was like, I sort of realized like, oh man, I can't keep up. Like, I'm getting all this music and I'm like listening to it for like 10 seconds to decide whether or not I keep it. Cause we could check out records. You could take home like 20 records, and you have like a week to decide whether or not you want to buy them. And we would get them for cheap at a discount. So it was like really easy to collect a lot of records, but not that easy to actually listen to them and to actually learn from them. And as a musician, to like get that kind of inspiration that I was used to getting. So I ended up just kind of collecting a lot of stuff, and I would like get into some things for sure. It's not like my music listening habits were like destroyed, but they really did change. And I just started to realize like, actually, I don't even need this. I don't care that much about these objects. They're nice, but like, I got just as much out of like dubbing a tape from my friend when I was 12 and like listening to that, and I don't need to like own it. And also I didn't like that thing of like deciding like this sort of 10-second, like, do I keep it or not? I hated that. When I think about that, it was like, if I had just bought the record and kept it, if I just bought it, I took it home, I would be forced to digest it. Maybe I would only listen to it 10 seconds, but it wasn't that thing of like, yes or no. You keep it for a while, you trade it back in. I've been in the process of digesting all the records that I collected during that time. My collection now is like not that big, but I'm still kind of getting through it. And I love having them. But I really stopped wanting to buy records. Like I totally lost the collecting bug. And then playing music, I just was like, this is what I'm all about. Oh, that was the other thing, was like working at Amoeba. I was so badly paid and badly treated. And I just was like, I don't even like music anymore. Like I got to this point where I was just like, I don't want music to be my job. So I left the record store jobs, and I started working like a temp in like office jobs, just doing, then my music, like the will to make music came back to me. I really lost it for a while. I was just like, there was a year that went by when I worked at Amoeba, I remember, where I did not even touch a guitar or a keyboard or anything. And Fred Frith used to come into Amoeba, and he was teaching at Mills College. And I remember he was like, "Oh, I'm teaching." I would always talk to him because he was always in my section, and I knew who he was, and I just would chat him up. And one day he was like, "Yeah, we're having open auditions. This class is open to the public if you want to be in the ensemble, to play in the ensemble." And I was like, "Whoa!" And I hadn't even touched a guitar in like a year. I really had nothing going musically, but I was like, okay. And I like showed up and did the audition, and then I played in that ensemble for a semester, and I think that kind of gradually got me back into like, oh, there is stuff I want to do with music. And then leaving Amoeba, working the office job, I was suddenly like really inspired. And so I've never gone back to working in record stores, and now I do work in music, but I'm working as a musician producer. So I think it's different, but still sometimes I miss that. I liked it when I wasn't connected to when music wasn't connected to money at all for me. Was
yes,
that's part of this discussion too.
In general, are you comfortable with the commodification of art? I'll preface it by saying I'm not. Like I have a very diffident, is that the word I'm looking for, relationship with it, and I think it's something I'm trying to work out, especially out here in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. I think that artists are a crucial part of society, and artists need to live. I don't like the system that we have now. I don't know that I have the perfect solution, but I think it lies something more towards socialism or some kind of pre-industrialized, like very, very rudimentary, like dysfunctional capitalism of like, I don't know. I mean, like, I really don't. I don't know. I don't have a solution, but I do think that there's got to be something better than this. And yeah, I mean, I'm not comfortable with anything really. I think it's weird. Anything being a commodity feels like a problem to me. But if anything is gonna be a commodity, I don't have a problem with music being that way. But I guess I don't believe in the value of anything. Like I don't necessarily believe. Like I used to work on a farm and growing food. You really are quickly realizing that actually food, even the most basic commodities that we have, like their financial value is it's very arbitrary and it's not real. Like the farm that I worked at would throw away tons of food that was just as good as the food that we sold. And why, and you would just ask yourself, like, why, is a carrot really is it worth 30 cents or is it worth, $30,000 or is it worth nothing? I just think, those abstractions are hard for people to really deal with. They don't totally make sense with our experience, but, we're all pretty used to it by now. I think it could be a lot better. And so I just would say that about anything, not just music, but yeah, artists have to be supported. And, otherwise we don't have art. And I think that's, there's a lot of places and times and places where you don't find art at all. So, I mean, this is better than that, but this isn't really that good either. Or this isn't that good, but it could be worse.
Yeah. We're towards the end of the show. There's one question I thought of that I want to kind of circle back to. When your mom was in theater, did she enjoy being an actor on Broadway? What was the transition like for her out of it? Like, because I was trying to think of like how that might have influenced you when you were growing up.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, she basically left that work because she's told me that she didn't like being like not getting roles because of her body type or her physicality. And yeah, I think she just got tired of it. But she did really, I think she loved parts of it a lot. And I think she's continued to do the parts that she loves. Like, I think, teaching is a little bit like, it's a kind of performance.
Yeah.
and she's also been teaching theater for a long time too. So she gets that. But yeah, she left basically, like when my sister's older. She left when my sister was born, or a little before that. And I think just raising us and not working outside the home I think that was hard for her. I think. Yeah, I don't know how that played into me. I mean, I'm probably like kind of like my mom. I'm sort of like, we're both kind of like on the shyer side of personality types, and it feels a little bit like, I don't know, it's hard to be in the public. It's hard to be like judged in public and stuff. And but I'm still, I'm still enjoying doing music, but I can really understand my mom's feelings about that. I wish that she could still act, but I don't know. She seems fine about it. She really doesn't seem to miss it. So
yeah,
and just the other side of that question. I mean, my dad wanted to be a musician when he was younger.
Huh.
Like he did 1 year. He went to Columbia as a music major in 1958, and he was there at the same time as Van Dyke Parks. And I think he played in the pit orchestra of some musicals, I think, with Van Dyke Parks, which is weird to think about. And he left school after a year, and what he told me, has told me very little about it, but he just said that he wasn't good enough or something, or he didn't feel like he had the kind of talent that he thought was needed. So he never went back to writing music. And so that was something that I thought about that a lot as a kid, much more than my mom, because I just think I had this sense of like it didn't make sense to me why he stopped, or I didn't. I felt like he had some unfinished business about that. My mom, I didn't get that sense that she felt unfulfilled. I think her creative spirit went into other things, whereas my dad's just kind of he killed it and just became all about business and partying and stuff.
Huh. So. Interesting.
So yeah, that probably went into some of my music, my thinking about music for sure. Like I thought I could reawaken this in my dad maybe or something. It's pretty weird to think about, but yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come over and be on this. Yeah, thank you. I love your music so much.
Oh, thanks.
New album is so good.
Right on. Thanks.
So thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time.
Right.
Bye.
Bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye.